All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us during Eco3 Earth Week, which is a week-long celebration of our community's commitment to sustainability with a lineup of events, learning, and service. Each day this week, we will be leading a series of virtual webinars, each focusing on different actions for climate resiliency, including actions for businesses, environmental justice, solar, and climate throughout our community. Each of these items are outlined as important actions in the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan. Today, we will be joined by Lora Wedge, COO of Ecolibrium3, and Brett Cease from Citizens Climate Lobby as panelists. We will also have breakout rooms for a variety of climate action topics, including timely actions, actions for beginners, actions you can do with family, friends, or neighbors, and business actions. We want to welcome our breakout room facilitators, Jenna Yeakle from Sierra Club, Alyssa Friesen from Aimclear, Katrina Viegas from Beaumier, Trogdon, Orman, Hurd, and Viegas, and Rebecca Bischoff from American Engineering Testing Incorporated. Today's conversation will be recorded and uploaded onto our YouTube channel. Thank you to our panelists and facilitators. We want to also thank our sponsors and partners for Earth Week and for their dedication to an equitable and sustainable future. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Lora, I will pass it off to you.
Thanks, Kristen, and thank you everyone for joining us and being with us on Earth Day. We are here and excited to get you to take some action and move forward climate action in Duluth. So I'm going to introduce you briefly to the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan, and then Brett will explain how we're going to take action and break into groups today. Let me share my screen. So the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan was a citizen effort coordinated by us here at Ecolibrium3 in partnership with our many organizations in the Duluth Climate and Energy Network, and it was funded by a grant from CERTS. The process was to look at a number of environmental initiatives, including Project Drawdown, which is an international consortium of scientists and thinkers who have decided looked at with scientific backing what needs to be done to draw down our carbon. And we also looked at the Imagine Duluth 2035 plan and Minnesota Green Step Cities. And then we also consulted a number of environmental justice frameworks. And we talked to 20 local experts. We started pulling this together at the beginning, right before the pandemic. And so our original intention was to go out and do a number of community engagement sessions, but we ended up having to do this framework and then build on it with engagement in this kind of way after the fact. So the key findings, the most impactful things we found in doing this process to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in Duluth were in 4 areas. Food and agriculture, the most impactful action there was to develop a local and ecologically sound food system infrastructure that enables and encourages us to grow, process, and distribute the food our community residents and businesses need. Duluth was a major hub of food production in the upper Midwest before World War II, and we can grow our food here again. The next most impactful action was transportation. We need to prioritize street design and modes of transportation that put people first, like walking, biking, and public transportation. Duluth, for example, was the first city in Minnesota to introduce fully electric buses in 2018, and we can continue this kind of leadership. In buildings, the most impactful action is to make our buildings more energy efficient and fueled by clean and efficient energy. Much of our housing stock in Duluth is old and inefficient, and this is a growing field for jobs. Clean energy jobs grew 2.5 times faster than other jobs in Minnesota in 2019, and the largest clean energy employer was in energy efficiency. And the last most impactful action is with energy production. We need to move our electricity production to renewables and support the development of community-owned, locally produced clean energy. Close to 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from our electricity production, and this is because we largely rely on coal and gas still to create our electricity. So then in the plan, each one of those sections has actions in it. And for example, in each one, there's 3 key strategies. So in energy production, that would be to shift production to enhance our efficiency and to improve the system. And then within each one of those are a number of actions. And the actions fall into 4 categories. Personal awareness actions, these are things that you can do around your personal beliefs and values. Individual and household actions that you could do. Institutional and business actions, and community and systemic actions. And these are what we're going to dig into today. There's also a page of over 200 community initiatives, groups that are already doing this great work in our community that we can build on and support. Also recently, the city of Duluth came out with its first climate action work plan. This just was released in February of 2022, which was a big step forward for our community. And that has similar key strategies to reduce energy consumption in buildings, increase efficiency and resilience in city utilities, support low carbon transportation options, support renewable energy, improve stormwater management, reduce solid waste, reduce disparities in public health, seek sustainability opportunities that support economic growth, and to identify carbon sequestration opportunities. So now I'm going to pass it over to Brett Cease to talk about why we're here today. What is the need for action?
Thank you, Laura, and happy Earth Day to all. There certainly is a great need for action, and we're glad that we're participating and joining together today to do just that. So I'm briefly going to review a timeline that motivated us to create the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan, and then jump into how we can act together today for those that are tuning in live or listening in later to the recording. So a quick review here of these 5 dates. Clearly, Duluth has been engaged in this process for a long time. For many of us in the community, this has been something that has been focused, and Eco3 has been at the forefront of this for a long time. A couple of these dates really outlined the Imagine Duluth 2035 process. It was the city's most comprehensive plan to that point, completed in 2018, that included an energy and conservation chapter that outlined policies and strategies aimed at really helping Duluth start to reduce energy and greenhouse gas emissions from both municipal operations and throughout the community. And then basically in response to the city council passing a climate emergency resolution and tasking the city with creating a climate action plan, the city just this last several months really has basically created and released its first Duluth Climate Action Work Plan to really implement a plan to address climate change in response to that resolution. The city staff worked with the Great Plains Institute and Common Spark Consultant to develop that plan, and it focuses in the next 5 years on near-term mitigation and adaptation measures and building on ongoing and community efforts throughout our city. And I also did want to flag, especially too, in her most recent State of the City address just this past month, Mayor Larson committed us to achieving carbon neutrality as a community for the first time by 2050 with the wonderful Race to Zero, Cities Race to Zero initiative. If you'd like to know more about either of those, I'm putting a link in the chat where you can specifically find the transcript from the mayor's State of the City speech, and then also where you can find the Duluth City Climate Action Work Plan here. And we'll make sure for those listening in later to have those in the footer notes too. So the biggest thing that I'd like to also close with on this slide is just one of the other elements on this timeline is the most recent 6th assessment report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that just came out. That first, second, and third installments are all out now. And, I think especially for us this Earth Day, a lot of news stories have been framing the report and its messaging as signaling now or never for climate action. And I think it's really critical to realize that we are in this important window to take action. And it's absolutely true that the more ambitious 1.5 degree Paris target is rapidly slipping out of our reach. And it's also key for us today to buckle down and realize that it's really important to understand it'll never be too late to lessen the impacts of climate change. And the climate of a 1.8 degrees Celsius world is more livable than a 2 degrees Celsius world, which would be better than a 2.2 degrees Celsius world. And so it's true that climate policy and all the actions that we can take are currently right now maximally urgent. There's no point in our lifetimes where it's never going to be too late to leave the world a better place for the actions that we take for future generations. And so that is why today we are focused on acting and not only letting that report whip us into despair, but also focusing on what we can do in this community to achieve these goals and these timelines that our community leaders have set forth. So let's act and let's review how we can do that today. Basically, we're going to use this webinar to help you take action, report it on the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan website impact page, and then if you'd like to also help amplify your call to action by sharing it to social media to help us really achieve those 100 actions that our goal has today for Earth Day and climate action. And the process is pretty straightforward. We've got this simple 6-step solution for you. With each of these steps, as you have questions, especially as we jump into breakout rooms, you'll have the chance to obviously raise your hand, and our facilitators here today for each of those rooms are going to walk you through that. First off, we're going to have everyone choose a breakout room. That'll be for the next 30 minutes, really, where you can jump in and really start exploring some of these specific actions that Lora reviewed with a small group that's focused based on your interest area. And your host then is going to give you an overview of those several possible actions once you choose or are assigned the breakout room of your choosing, and also answer any questions. We'll also, in that breakout room, make sure that you can start taking your actions and reporting it on that impact page that I just described. The host will help you achieve that and accomplish those. And then we're using the hashtag Duluth Climate Action to really amplify on our social media profiles how we're all taking these actions together in a community. And then we'll make sure to close out and come back for the last 10, 15 minutes for discussion in the main room. So if it's all right, I will just quickly review the 4 breakout rooms. Right now, we've got the wonderful Kristen Kerwick, who has set up our breakout rooms. Thank you, Kristen, for accomplishing that. And they are timely actions, room number 1. Behind room number 2, we'll have actions for beginners, for people that would like to jump right in to get started kind of on the simple, shallow end of the pool. If you are business focused and would like to kind of figure out with your business or community contributions what you can get involved in, we've got a wonderful breakout on that. And then I'm going to be focusing on actions that you can do collectively with your family, your friends, or your neighbors in community. So 1, 2, 3, or 4, you get to pick behind which door you'd like to go. And instructions as far as how to do that. Right now, you should see on your screen a little breakout room icon that showed up on the black Zoom toolbar. It should be at the very bottom far right corner. And basically, you can select from there one of those rooms. Or if you're having a hard time finding that, just type in the room number that you'd like to have in the chat. And Kristen will also make sure to put you there. And with that, we'll see you back here in about 30 minutes, everyone.
So, okay. Welcome to everybody who's come to this session. Yeah, we're going to be talking about business actions that businesses can do in Duluth that can help reduce their emissions and improve, just work on our climate, both locally and in a larger area. So I'm Alyssa Friesen from Aimclear. We also have in the blue, Katrina Viegas from Beaumier, Trogdon, Orman, Hurd, and Viegas, and Rebecca Bischoff from American Engineering Testing. So we've got 4 different kind of sections of our options, and those will be energy production, buildings, food and agriculture, and transportation. So our first one to talk about is within energy production. So I believe it is. And that is Rebecca, I think that's your section.
Oh, I thought that was Katrina. Yes, I can certainly start. We kind of tag team this one, so I understand the confusion. So as Alyssa said, I'm Katrina Viegas. I'm an attorney and a partner at a law firm here downtown. Pleased to be part of this today. The 3 of us are actually part of Leadership Duluth, which is a program put on by the Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce, and all Leadership Duluth participants do a service project. And so we were really amazed to have an opportunity to do a partnership with Equilibrium3 to assist with some of its Earth Week programming, and specifically with an eye towards business involvement. And so that's why we're here today. As Alyssa said, energy production is one of our focus areas as well. And I'd like to speak with you a little bit about adding renewables and solar to your business repertoire. So the way we've tried to structure this is to ask a few questions to make sure that people are aware of the specific issues that tie in these particular topics for businesses, and then provide a few examples of some options that a business might want to consider in order to have an impact in this particular area. So the first did you know for renewable energy is, did you know that energy production from coal and gas creates most of the greenhouse gas emissions in Duluth? In the entire city of Duluth, energy production creates the most greenhouse gases. So what we would like businesses to keep in mind is that every decision you make about energy can have a huge and meaningful impact upon that, because you're targeting the biggest area of emissions just from the get-go. So don't be overwhelmed by your options. Don't say, oh, I can't make a difference, I'm too small, I'm just a, general practice kind of office, that kind of thing. Everything matters. So did you also know that individual and community owned, locally produced clean energy makes good business sense as the demand for energy grows and as the prices of non-renewable energy sources increase? So a few options that businesses might want to consider are, first and foremost, with respect to solar, check out your business on the Eco3 Duluth Shines map to see just how much solar potential your rooftop or your property could potentially produce. There is a very neat map where you can just literally use a navigator to find your landscape, find your rooftop, find your property, and just zoom in until you're able to see, am I in the red zone where I have an amazing amount of solar potential, like a flat roof, things that might not be blocked by too many trees. Of course, you want trees, but and if you have the ability to zoom in far enough and click on your business or click on your property, it will go forward with calculating some basic numbers for you about kilowatt hours that you might be able to generate, the potential savings from an average utility bill, and other types of data that were generated through a lot of other people's involvement in this type of project in the past. And links to real-time information about how to follow up on that too, if you're interested. Also, we want businesses to know that solar might cost far less than you think. We'd like you to consider exploring the federal investment tax credit. Something like 26% of your solar project can be saved through tax incentives and things of that nature. So please be sure to ask your utility provider about rebates and check into other state and local initiatives as well as the federal ones. So there are a lot of financial opportunities out there, and you won't be eating 100% of the cost. You might not even be eating 75 or 70% of the cost if you play your cards right. So do your homework, ask questions, and be sure to talk to your financial people as well. I believe there was a link put into the chat with respect to the solar page and renewables page for Eco3 for more information.
Okay, thank you. Our next, the next section within energy production is conducting a plug load inventory audit. And that's something just very basic that will help a lot with your energy and the longevity of your equipment. So a plug load inventory is just kind of looking around your office and seeing what do we have plugged in, what's being used, what doesn't have to be plugged in all the time. You can cut down a lot of consumption by either unplugging or turning off things that you don't use all the time. An example might be if you have like a laminator or something, you're probably not using that every day or multiple times a day. You can leave it unplugged and just plug it in at the times that you need it. So as well as saving energy and on your energy bill, that increases the longevity of your equipment because it's not having to work hard when you're not even using it. So the steps that you have for conducting that audit are, first is to review your equipment and identify what you have, what you use. Again, like I said, I mean, I've definitely looked around our office before and we've got some monitors or things plugged in and that we haven't used in months, and there's really no reason to have them plugged in if we're not using them. The next step is to remove your unnecessary equipment. Like I said, things that aren't being used at all. I mean, sometimes even something is broken and you just leave it plugged in because, you know, it's not my job. The third step is to replace equipment with energy efficient ones. And this isn't to say that you should just get rid of anything that isn't energy efficient and replace it. It's more of the idea that when it's time to upgrade something, or it's, you know, really at the end of its lifespan, or taking a huge percentage of energy compared to a newer one, then you should replace. The greenest option is usually to use what you already have instead of buying all new things, because there's still life left in your old things and equipment. The next step is to reduce the number of devices that you have turned on when not in use, which I went over earlier. And the final step there is to retrain or train your staff to know like why to shut things off and when to shut them off. It's definitely simplest for some people to just, you know, leave your conference room equipment on all the time, because then you don't need to bother turning it back on later, or you can just walk in and it's plug and play. But it's really not that much of a time savings, especially compared to the energy savings that you can have. So those are kind of our big things. And along with, actually, yeah, those are the main things that we've got for conducting a plug load inventory. You can also, if you're not sure how much energy something is using, you can, the library, I believe, rents devices called a kilowatt. And what it does is you plug it into an outlet and then you plug your device into it, and it will tell you exactly how much energy that's using. Because sometimes you might have a high energy bill, but you can't it doesn't pinpoint what exactly is using all of that power. So using those on older equipment or equipment that you kind of like suspect might be using a lot of power is good. One example that I had from our office is that we discovered that our coffee maker, our kind of like more industrial coffee maker, was having it on or plugged in all day and night, caused a big jump in our electricity bill because the water in there was constantly being kept to the 210 degrees. And especially things that produce heat use a lot more electricity. So that's just one of the examples of ours. Our next one up will be increasing energy efficiency in buildings. And this one is Rebecca.
All right. So for my, did you know, in Duluth, buildings account for approximately 19 of our greenhouse gas emissions, which I was pretty surprised when I learned that. And then also helping your business with electricity and natural gas, use electricity and natural gas more efficiently conserves energy and reduces our emissions and lessens the need for new utility infrastructure. So some things you can do for your business is conduct an energy audit. You can connect with Minnesota Power about who can do that. Seal air leaks and weatherize doors and windows. That's a pretty easy option and pretty cost effective to do that. Reduce your electricity usage, kind of like what Alyssa was just talking about. Switching to LED bulbs, turning off appliances. Even if they're in standby mode, they can still draw power. So just turn them completely off. And then look for Energy Star label when you're replacing your appliances and electronics. So that's for increasing energy efficiency. And then the next one is showing off your energy efficiency. So maybe you're a business that's already done some of these things. You can display, like if you have Energy Star scores or LEED certification, you can show that off. You can also, if you're the owner of a building, encourage your leasers to do some sustainable energy practices and create incentives to reduce their water or energy use. Encourage more recycling and use of non-hazardous cleaning products. And, think that's about it.
Okay, our next one is food and agriculture. And the first option for that is great for businesses is providing compost options. So composting allows businesses to divert waste from heavy trash containers, which can potentially reduce how often you have to get your garbage picked up, which would then reduce the money that you're spending on that waste. Most restaurants in the area are actually mandated to separate and recycle their pre-consumer food waste, which is just things from like food prep and before it gets to the table. Definitely encouraged to separate and compost post-consumer things, like things that are left on the plate after somebody's gone, leftovers from a buffet, things like that. So you can call WLSSD for a free assessment to help you identify like a good program for you. And most businesses that contact them and have an assessment do continue with that and create their own recycling program within their business. You can also contact your garbage hauler, which would either be Waste Management or Hartels, and they often have food waste collection, usually in one of the large bins that sits outside, depending on how much stuff you need to get rid of. I'll also say for our business and things like that, it's really nice to not have food waste in the garbage, because then like that's usually like that garbage tends to smell, especially if people are bringing in like a wide variety of foods, and it just kind of like gets gross and sits there. And with composting, you can have, you know, maybe like a smaller bucket that you bring out each day. It's not too bad. You can even go in like small steps and like just compost like your coffee grounds, if that's something that you do. If you have one of the larger coffee makers that you're going through a lot of, you can just having those in like a bucket and then getting rid of them every so often definitely helps. You can even, if you have like gardeners in your office, their coffee grounds are really good for a lot of gardens. I know Starbucks offers like their used grounds that people like snap right up. So you can just start small. You don't have to necessarily go big or go home. You know, you can go little and then go home. Within food and agriculture, another thing that's important is to buy food that is grown or processed locally. Obviously, we can't grow a lot of foods up here. You're not going to be getting like bananas and pineapples locally, but eating other local food improves our local economy, kind of cycles that money back into the city. It reduces our transportation emissions. A lot of food emissions come from kind of the last mile of transportation, and it leads to greater food security within our area. So doing things like buying foods at grocery stores that have been locally grown. We have a lot of produce that is grown here. I know there's in Superior, they have by the Challenge Center, they have those tomatoes that are grown, Bay City tomatoes, I think it is. And there's just a lot of options for that kind of produce, as well as meats locally. Within there, we have their catering companies in the area and restaurants that make a pledge to purchase local ingredients. So if you don't have a kitchen where you're buying ingredients for meals or snacks or foods, definitely when you have like a catering event or ordering from a restaurant or things, purchasing from a restaurant that does that kind of like takes that step out of your court and you can hand it off to somebody else. As well as looking for, there's a Superior Grown label that is often that can be on some foods that are grown within our region, and that kind of gives you the heads up that it is grown locally. And then our next step is transportation, which is Katrina.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right, so this is a fun one for businesses. There's a lot of positive things that businesses can consider from just a business owner perspective and managing costs for the business, but also fun things to keep your employees engaged, because that has not been an easy thing, especially during the pandemic. So if a business is looking to become more bike friendly, one of the things we would like them to ask themselves, did they know transportation creates around 1/4 of Duluth's greenhouse gas emissions and more than half of most people's individual emissions? So around 25% of the entire city's emissions and more than 50% of each individual person's individual emissions. That's just on average, of course. Did you know also that adding bike racks can increase foot traffic to your business, reduce congestion and parking issues to boost access to your business overall, and encourage employees to commute by bicycle? Well, it can. So what can businesses do with respect to becoming more bike friendly? You can provide bike racks or other types of safe bicycle storage at your business for employees and customers alike, depending upon kind of size that you have available, of course, or you can consider teaming up with other local businesses, maybe neighboring businesses that share a sidewalk and other types of things, so that you can make the most use of the space that you have to make arrangements for either your employees, if you have kind of a bike-friendly culture for employees that you're trying to build, or of course, like we said, for customers and other types of people who frequent your area, just to draw more traffic into you that is not the parking space hogging, gas guzzling types of situations. So if you are going to do that, though, something to keep in mind is that businesses should be very careful to ensure that their bike storage areas are well lit, and that they're also easy to access for the people that you're expecting and wanting to use those bike racks or bike storage areas, of course, and that they're protected from the elements if possible, and that they have suitable signage. So is this a bike rack for employees? Is this a bike rack for customers of any kind, or just anybody who's in the area? People would like to know. Otherwise, Minnesota nice, people are just a little too shy about utilizing things that they see if they're not sure it's meant for them. So let them know, is this for you or is this for somebody else? And draw those kinds of interactions closer to your business. And of course, when we say protected from the elements, we have so much snow and we also have so much rain. Looking outside today, it could go either way. And so, you know, if you can come up with some sort of lean-to even type of open-ended storage with some ability to lock bikes within it, that could be a great boon to just encouraging your employees or customers to rely upon the ability to bike to your location and to have a safe place to store their bike. I believe there are a few links that we're putting in the chat about providing bike racks and bike storage opportunities, because there is so much more material posted to the Equilibrium3 website on these issues, and so many more other types of actions that businesses and other folks in the community can take. I think the next section is mine as well, providing employee incentives. So this kind of piggybacks on the other one that we were just talking about. For business people, did you know that businesses can help keep their employees engaged, foster teamwork and some healthy competition, and also reducing greenhouse gas emissions and saving money by incentivizing climate-friendly behaviors in the workplace? So what can you do as a business person or somebody who has the ear of the person in charge and that can cut the checks and make these types of decisions for their organization? You can consider creating incentives for switching up your employees and owners' daily commutes, like incentivizing biking, taking mass transit, and carpooling to work. You can also consider offering employees discounted bus passes and also gift cards to local biking or other types of gear shops. Certainly, you know, you just throw a rock out the window, you're probably going to find a shop that would love to have your loyalty and to have the opportunity to interact with more of your customers and your employees to have those connections as well. So what else can businesses do? Well, if you want to reduce your business's supply and energy costs, you could consider creating team or department-focused incentives and competitions to monitor and reduce paper printing and copying, waste production, electricity consumption from lights and computers, and all other types of things. So that circles back a lot to what Alyssa was speaking to about the plug load inventory and other types of energy consumption and usage as well. So lots and lots of options. And I think there is a link in the chat for employee incentives, including and expanding upon these topics too.
Great, and then the next thing that we'll explain is reporting the actions that you've taken or are committing to take. So on the Ecolibrium website, where there's the list of options and ideas, there is the option to report your action. So you can click on report your action, and then that will bring you to a small form. You can enter your name, your zip code and your email address, and then in the comment box, say, you know, what you've done or pledged to do. And there is an option kind of underneath where it says comments about whether you want to leave your name, your comment, or both. You can definitely be anonymous or have just your name with no comment. But the goal is for this Earth Day is to hit 100 actions for collectively for the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan. So definitely going through those, seeing things that you have done or plan to do would be great and helpful. One way to help to do that is to share on social that you have taken action or plan to take action. These are some example posts. You can really write whatever you like. You can link to the Duluth Climate Action Plan. You can, like, encouraging other people, you can make a post saying, this is what I did, or this is a great idea. You can, you know, take a selfie saying, I did these actions. But yeah, any of those are great if you choose to share things on social. And then we have 7 minutes until we need to be back in the main room. Are there any questions? But I know you must be brimming with questions.
Well, you each come from different businesses. I guess one of my questions is, as you've gone through and put this together, was there anything that surprised you as an action that your business or it could be taking, or, you know, the amount of impact that different actions would have?
Great question.
I know, Jodi, one thing that I shared with my group mates here earlier is that I feel I've been a little too short-sighted in how I've been thinking about all of this. I work at a law firm, but we don't own our building. We're just one of many, many tenants in a building that's 9 or 10 floors high, and our landlord / landlady is on the top floor. And so, you know, we don't pay for our energy directly. We aren't billed for our usage. And so there's very little incentive, at least from my original perspective, to really manage that in a meaningful way. But through this process, I've really come to consider, well, what if I team up with some of the other businesses that have 10-year leases like our business does? And we kind of tag team our landlady to say, hey, if we're all going to do these 5 things, what are you going to do? You know, because the reality is, if we all do incentivize our businesses and employees to take any of these actions, it could actually impact our finances, because the common area maintenance fees will go down and other types of things that really do have a huge financial impact upon businesses' abilities to afford to stay downtown and to afford to maintain their businesses in, you know, the kind of location that people kind of expect them to be. So that's my 2 cents worth anyway.
I haven't taken a look at it yet, but I'm hoping to look at the solar map for our office. We don't own our building either, but our landlord owns it, and we're on like friendly terms and things like that. So I think it would be really interesting to look and see, because we do have a big flat roof downtown. So it would be great to see if that's an option that we could kind of prod him into.
Yeah, it was similar to Alyssa. We don't own the building, but our neighbor next door is the owner. So I think it would be really cool. We got a nice flat roof. Why not put solar up there? They are a construction company, so it seems like be right up their alley. And then also just the little things of, like, a lot of my coworkers do leave their computers on. So that's something I want to bring up at our next meeting is like how hard would it be just to turn it off at the end of the day to help us save some energy?
Yeah, especially on computers, like having things like the fans are running and like kind of end up cycling more like dust into the machines and stuff. It's definitely better for the computers to not just be on all night.
Well, I really enjoyed the presentation that you guys brought together. Are you also the team then that was working on like the brochure?
Yes.
That's us.
Lovely. Very excited about that. So well done. And I am just, I'm glad that this was recorded so that it can be shared out, because I think how you went through this is just so common sense. And I think there's a great opportunity for businesses to get more involved in the leadership in the climate area. And you guys have just demonstrated that for everyone. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jodi.
Lisa and I had a good conversation about how all of this can now serve Peace Church's tabling efforts on Sundays she's doing for the climate action plan too.
Yeah, I printed out also some like little pamphlet that, not pamphlet, but paper that Lora had written up. So I have those to give out, and then the people can scan it to get to the climate action plan and so on. And I just see, you know, what happens. And I want to talk to the church about, like, I'm going to think about, given what Brett and I talked about, what the church can do as a, like a group to take action on some things together. Like, I mean, they're already doing gardening, so maybe that's an easy thing. They like, Peace Church likes social justice stuff and gardening. They're not so big always on climate or things like that, because there are some parishioners who work in the Enbridge industry. And so they would rather have more social justice things.
I would just say climate justice is social justice.
Yeah. Oh, and you're going to be at Peace for like giving a talk at 9:30. So I will be around there too.
Well, thanks, Lisa. That's one piece of feedback from how your group discussion went. Does anyone else want to share any inspirations or questions that came up in your small groups?
One question that I had asked of our presenters is if there was something that I guess surprised them or as they were going through and putting this together, and what actions they think could maybe be the most impactful. Maybe that's not the question I asked, but those are the answers I got, and they were awesome. And I think one thing that then came out through each of those conversations is that just that we think about split incentives often between like a homeowner and landlord and a renter, and how sometimes that's really difficult if one person pays for the improvements, but the other person saves the energy and all of that. And we've done a lot of work on that. We're working with the city and a national group called the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, looking at that property owner versus renter situation. And what came out from each of the presenters was, well, our business doesn't own the building, but and there's, and even if the business isn't directly paying for the utilities, maybe there are much more opportunities to be thinking about things like solar or those efficiency pieces, even if businesses like downtown came together within one building, the financial savings that might be possible because they're paying for the common area maintenance. They're paying, maybe not as directly, but they are definitely paying for that. And so, we do a lot of thinking about this stuff, but we've not yet taken that idea of the split incentive landlord property owner as deep into commercial property and businesses before. So that was just a highly energy efficient light bulb that went on during their presentation.
Thank you for sharing, Jodi. And I know Lora and I are just happy to keep asking questions in your breakouts and the discussions you had in small groups. Any other takeaways, action steps, or feedback that your team had?
I wanted to ask if and when Ecolibrium3 is planning to share their climate action like numbers, and maybe which climate action got the most or had the most energy around it today, this week. That would be a fun thing to track and share with folks that have participated in these webinars.
Yeah, I was going to do that tomorrow after our whole day of actions today, so I could give some kinds of numbers or how many people took action.
Sweet. I knew you were on it.
Yeah, there's an action going out every hour from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. tonight. So we will hope that leads to some action. Any other sharing anyone wants to do from your breakout room?
One area that we loved exploring, especially with what the focus that we were talking about in our breakout room, thinking about how you can do things together in groups, whether it's family, friends, or neighbors, is thinking about some of the great Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan actions that are focused on really building community and doing it together. So it isn't just an individual side action, but anything from frequenting farmers markets, monitoring storm drains, giving of your time and money to organizations. There's a great directory that Lora featured. I think that's a really inspirational way to kind of collectively engage groups that you're a part of to figure out that this is something that we can do together. I really felt like that was one of the core areas that Lisa and I were focusing on and drawing heart with.
Yes, and I wanted to say and follow up to what Lisa was saying earlier is I've often thought of some of those things as almost like you could do an institutional review of your organization by are you doing all of these things? So like your church could look at the ones that fall into the institution categories and say, how many of these are we actually doing? I know we could do that at most organizations and still have plenty of things to take on as new items. And Luke is saying in the chat, he committed to not idling his car when it's cold or when he's on the phone or too lazy to get out of the car. Yeah, we had a nice conversation about how that is old knowledge that has not changed over time. Cars don't need to warm up anymore. That's back from old different fuel systems they used to have.
I'm going to just share what I told Brett, but if people are near UMD, yesterday a student did a whole climate change, climate confessions, and had just people coming and talking about climate and making pictures and stuff and talking too. Yeah, so it's at Ordine Court at UMD. And I took some pictures, but not many because I dropped my cell phone because I was so cold and it broke. And so, yeah, if you want to see and add to it, because we left chalk there. So.
I'm going to try to go there on my run today and tag you on Twitter. That's my goal, Lisa.
Well, thank you for everybody for participating. I think we'll pass it over to Kristen to give her little and close us up talk, and we'll let you go at 1.
Awesome. Thank you, Lora. Thank you so much to our speakers and facilitators today for sharing their insights and expertise and just talking about climate. We want to also once again thank our sponsors for Earth Week. I will display them on the screen here. Am I sharing the right screen? Okay, I have messed up in previous webinars before. Cool. So yes, we want to thank our sponsors again for Earth Week for their dedication to an equitable and sustainable future. And last but not least, thank you all for coming to participate in our Lunch and Learn webinar on actions for climate. And we hope to see you again at our shadow gardening activity going on right now until 3 p.m. today. It is at 2014 West Superior Street at our Superior Street office. And that is going on until 3 p.m. today. And also tomorrow's Lincoln Park spring cleanup from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I will display what other events we have going on there. So yeah, for folks interested in taking more action, we encourage you to go online to the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan, where you'll find more recommended actions and steps that will support in the development of an equitable and sustainable future in Duluth. And yeah, join us in our day of actions today. Thank you for joining and for making a commitment for taking action on climate.